Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this Saturday we have Sky Jaguar 2, a new shoot 'em up on Switch that's also coming out for the MSX VR. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From developer VCulb, Sky Jaguar 2 released for the Nintendo Switch in early September 2020. It's also coming out for the MSX VR, which is a modern retro MSX computer. And so it's something that's really interesting, where it's like a dual cartridge format, or rather this game is coming out in a dual cartridge format for that MSX VR, where it can be played in a classic MSX form, as well as this modern form that we see on the Nintendo Switch. This game itself, unfortunately, is not one that I feel I can recommend. I have not had that good of a time with it at all, and I'll explain why relatively quickly. Diving into the menu itself, from here we have our three difficulty selections we can select between: the Rookie mission, the Pro, and the Elite. The main difference between these missions, all the other difficulties do, or what they primarily do at least, is deactivate, or as it's written here, deactivate certain power-ups. From the main screen, we also have our only adjustable option. We can turn scan lines on, or we can turn them off. And there's a quick credit, but there's really nothing that's being shown there. So for the purpose of showing off the entire game with all the power-ups, we'll of course be looking at it from Rookie Mission. Selecting our mission, there's a brief three-line story that's given here, but we can just skip right past that, as it doesn't really add anything. So if the loading screen here shows our stage progression, the game has a total of 6 stages. In addition to our stage progression, it also shows our controls. The fire button, which is mapped to 2 buttons on the Switch face, as well as 2 change weapon buttons. The game itself is a widescreen format vertical scroller, so of course no tate in this sort of scenario. We have the ability to move around like normal, and of course, as you can see from the controls, we have a fire as well as a change weapon. We always have our 3 weapons available. So there's the straight shot, which is my preferred for most scenarios, as it deals the most direct damage to enemies in front of us. But we also have this spread, which at level 1 is not particularly effective at taking out enemies. And then there's this handy side shot for defeating enemies to our sides. It also has a laser that targets enemies in front of us, but that laser is actually quite weak. It does not deal damage quickly at all. So only use it if absolutely necessary. So there are several different power-ups we can collect. I already picked up a little S power-up, and that increases our speed. It's actually a really nice visual representation, as you can see from the jet trails trailing our fighter. So at level 1, which would be the base level, it starts off as 2 small blue flames. Then the first time you pick up a speed power-up, they'll progress to green, longer flames. And lastly, there's the level 3, which is the yellow flames with the blue, or rather purple tips, which definitely looks cool. But it's nice having that visual indicator of our speed. There's also a power-up that we can pick up to give us missiles. We'll be seeing that shortly. Those cycle between 2 letters, H and R. The H is homing, the R are rockets. So of course the rockets fire straight ahead, and the homing, self-explanatory, they home. There's also blue crystal that will restore our shield health. If we take damage, that will deduct from our shield health in the top left. Oh, here's the missile power-up. Yeah, but this crystal here will also restore that. Another thing that crystal does is it gives us additional weapon power if our shield is full. And lastly, we come to all these pecans that have been falling down upon us. So if we collect these power-up cans, or pecans as I've been calling them, they will give us weapon level power. Ultimately, we're looking to increase the bar on our top right all the way to get from level 1 to level 2, and then from level 2 to level 3, which is the max level. It is possible to fill the gauge up beyond that point, but that doesn't really do a whole lot other than maybe buffer our chances of not losing the weapon should we take a hit. So let's talk a little bit about what happens if we do get hit by enemies or enemy shots. So if we have options, which I was able to pick one up not that long ago, there are 3 different options: blue, red, and yellow. So the blue fires straight ahead, the red fires at an angle, and the yellow, the options fire around in a 360-degree pattern around the ship. And those options will help protect us from enemy shots, as if they happen to hit the options will instead be destroyed. However, even if the shots don't hit the options, if we get hit ourselves, we'll still lose an option. So it's basically kind of acting as shields in addition to providing additional firepower, which is nice. However, if we don't have that and we take damage, what happens at that point? Well, even one shot, no matter what our speed is at, will reduce our speed back to base level. If we have any missiles, those missiles will also be lost at that point, which is quite unfortunate. And, well, actually, great example, I just got hit there, and we lost both our missiles and all of our speed power-ups. In addition to that, you lose some of the weapon power you've collected. I'm not exactly 100% sure of how much you lose, but it is a significant amount. As to get from no weapon power at all to level 1, or to rather level 2 weapon power, takes 80 of these pecans without any other power-up pickups. 80! That is ridiculous! It takes way too long to upgrade in this game. In addition to taking too long to upgrade, the game itself kind of expects you to upgrade. So there are certain enemies that at earlier points in a stage will take fewer shots than they will later in the stage, as if they're expecting you to upgrade and be at a certain power level at that point. That's not good design, because if you take and lose, or if you lose too much weapon power, if you take too many hits, you'll drop from the current level you're at to the previous level. So real quick, we find ourselves at the boss to stage 1. This boss is relatively simple. It looks like it could be a more difficult fight. You've got these orbs on either side of us that will fire lasers, or lightning rather, between them. And then we've got the core in the middle that's shooting shots at us, either straight shots or these orbs that explode in 8 different directions. But we can avoid the lasers entirely by being at the bottom of the screen, kind of cheesing the whole fight. Fight taken care of, we move on to the next stage. And that kind of stage progression is basically what we have in Sky Jaguar 2. The stages themselves do feel a little bit long, so that's something to keep in mind. Good, because the game has length to it. Bad, because the stages kind of just feel like they drag on it. So back to the whole problem that I have with the game's power-up system. So it just takes way too many of collecting these power-up cans to move up from one level to another, especially where it's possible to lose the energy you've collected by getting hit, and if you take enough hits, you actually go backwards in power. So if you kept the same level of power, or if it was easier to upgrade, say a quarter of the requirements, so rather than taking a total of 80 cans to upgrade, just taking say 20, then it wouldn't be that big of a deal to lose some power when you took hits, if you could quickly build back up to where you are. But another big problem with the whole scenario of building back up is the problem of losing the speed as well when you take damage. So say you've just barely hit the next power level of your shot. So you're at level 1, you get to level 2, and you're just barely there. But then suddenly you take a hit, it drops you back to power level 1. And not only did it drop you back to power level 1, but it dropped you back to base speed. Now you have to collect all those power-ups to get back to level 2 shot, but instead of having level 2 speed to be able to maneuver around fast enough to get the power-up cans, you have to really struggle to get those, and you end up taking additional hits from the enemy shots, dropping your power level even further and setting you further and further behind the curve the game has. That doesn't make for a fun game, that makes for a frustrating game, and that's kind of where I'm at with Sky Jaguar. The gameplay loop just gets a little bit too frustrating. So, there you have it, Sky Jaguar 2 served up for your enjoyment. I do think this game is interesting in that it's being developed and has an NSX version, so really classic video gaming computer, as well as a modern version, and it's being developed for modern modern retro computer, I guess is the best way to refer to it. But that interest there is really dampened by just the flaws in the gameplay. So that's where my minus flavors begin. My biggest minus flavor is the weapon level up system, where it just it penalizes you too quickly, and it doesn't reward you in a way that is fast and satisfying. And then there's also that difficulty leveling, where you have enemies that get harder as you progress through a stage, and if you've taken hits, there's a decent chance that those enemies are going to be not possible for you to kill, making it that much harder that you can level back up to where you need to be. A little less minor of a complaint, but some of the art just feels a little too flat overall in the game, so just a little bit more vibrant or shaded sprites I think could add a lot to the gameplay. But on the plus flavor, I do like the weapon system that is present in the game. I really like having all 3 weapons. If there was any improvement I would like to see with that, it would be nice to have them mapped to the shoulder buttons on the... Well, we just took a shot and lost our awesome level 3 shot there. But anyway, it'd be great if those changing of weapons were also mapped to the shoulder buttons on the Switch controller, and you could move back and forth between weapons at will rather than having to cycle between them. It could make your decisions for which shots to use that much more dynamic. But I do like having those weapon systems. And then there's also the price point. Complaints aside, this game is only $3.99 US on the Nintendo eShop, which does help lessen some of it, but at the end of the day, even with that great price point, it's not one that I can recommend. I've just had too much of a frustrating time with this title. So, there you have it. Sky Jaguar 2 served up for your enjoyment. It's one that is interesting, but at the end of the day, I just can't recommend this flavor. Thank you so much for joining me this week for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and as always, I look forward to seeing you again next week.